Hello everyone, this is Christian Meldick's Interactive, and in this video we will focus on updating our routing system to handle query parameters. As you know right now, all that we are really doing related to routing is an enum value. So we'll convert that enum value then to an actual object. The object itself will of course contain the enum value, but we'll add a name property as well as the query property, which is of course the values from the query string. And once we have the routing system updated, we will finish up by adding in the ability on our routing service for us to request a query parameter in a typed way. What we'll do is we'll create an object which represents the query that we're expecting, or an interface, and then we'll use that to have a typed way of saying I want the ID. In this case, our query object will have an ID and which property on it. So we'll get back those properties, and we'll also have the ability to say, in case of say the ID, what we'll get back by default is a string, but we'll have a way of saying no, I want a number, and provide in the transform that will convert that string to, in this case, number or whatever you want it to be. So those are the things that we will take care of in this video. Alright, before we get started here, I do want to say thank you for watching the video and subscribing. If you're not a subscriber, I hope you'll please consider subscribing to the channel. With that said, we're going to start up by fixing a small mistake that we made, or that I made. So right now, if you open the settings menu and you navigate forward, it closes, which is what I want. But if it's open when you navigate backwards, it doesn't close. And the reason for that is if we go into, scroll this up to the right spot, the app bar, if we go into the settings, we'll see that we're listening to navigate. Well, we also need to listen to this routing service navigate back, subscribe this close. So that's perfect. So now if we have it open, navigate forward, it closes. Have it open, navigate back, it closes. Next up is the app bar itself. So for whatever reason, I decided to reinvent the wheel instead of using view to take care of this for us. What we're doing in here is deciding whether or not we need to show the back button in the app bar. And of course, we want to show that if the route history is greater, the length is greater than 0. We don't need to go through all of this. It's not a problem now, but it would be something we had to fix later anyway. What we'll do is get rid of those two and just change this to a computed property. So get show back, so that return this route state history length. So if the length is not equal to 0, show the back button. So we save that, go to accounts, securities. So the back button is working the way that it's supposed to now. And next up is we're going to turn to the actual main content for this video here. First off, if we take a look, so we're going to deal with allowing query parameters in our routing system, and we're going to have to come up with a type for that for the query. And if we look, then this property $route has a query. We're going to use the same type for it, which is a type of dictionary. So that's where we got the type from. So let's go ahead and save that. We can close, and we're going to the types file within the routing folder, and we're going to import from, and that type is sitting on view router /type /router. Will give us a dictionary, view routes router, and here we'll now export an interface, which is route options. It'll have a possible query on it, and that's the dictionary that we were just looking at. So that dictionary again was either a dictionary of string or an array of string or null. And then we'll export interface iRoute. So we'll basically convert everywhere we were doing the enum to this iRoute. Then it'll have property ID, which will be the enum. And put a name on it. That just helps looking in the Vuex store to see what route we're talking about and being pushed and popped. Now, right now, it just has the enum value, which is hard to remember which one it is. And we'll say that this thing extends route options. So we'll save that, close it. Now, to really kick everything off is if we go into our route types. In here, we're saying we're bringing in that enum. We're going to just take that to be iRoute. So our history will contain this iRoute, and we'll push to it iRoute. Save that. So now it's a game of whack-a-mole. Because we've changed that, we've created a lot of errors. First thing we're going to fix is the routing service. So up here inside of the routing service, we're bringing in the enum. I'm just going to copy this instead of reformatting this thing. Get rid of my extra semi. So we have the iRoute and iRoute options now. So we'll come down here and our subjects, which we're just taking in the enums, will now take in an iRoute. I'm going to take the opportunity to fix this thing. That should be A for navigate, which doesn't only affects that, so that's changed. And while we're at it, we're going to add another property, and that's going to be public get history. And that's just going to return this jazz down here, so that instead of being an idiot and writing all this stuff out twice, now we just say this dot history. Looks much cleaner. So this dot history part is changed. I'm going to make it a little bit easier on us some places to create the route that we need to add to the history. So we're going to make a method, create route. We'll take in and the enum and possible options. We're going to spit out an iRoute. So instance method, oops, iRoute, and so now we just need to return, and on there we need the ID, which is the enum name. We have a function or method looking for that enum. It'll give us the entry, which has the name on it, and then we use the spread operator on the options. And now we are creating, or have a method for creating routes. And we'll go down here to our navigate to. So we'll have navigate to, we'll modify it so that it can take in some iRoute options. So my goal was to not break everything that we've already done. So one other thing that we're going to change while we're here is that, so if I'm sitting on the home and I go to accounts and then back to home, the way we have it set up now is that's two forward route navigations, right? We've pushed two routes on there. What I want to say is that in that particular case, if we say if this dot history dot length, if that's greater than 0, and this dot history, so the top thing on the history, if that ID is the same as where we're going, then instead of navigating forward, we'll just say this dot back, and then return. So we'll just navigate back. Okay, small change there. Next thing, we need to put an iRoute in here. So that's this dot create route to and the options. Save that. So we've unbroken the routing service, But we're going to add one more thing while we're here, and that's to deal with converting a route, an I route, and getting the query string out of it. So public query string. So give me a route, I route, and I will give you back a string. So we will return type of route.entry or .query. So if the query is not equal to undefined, we will do something. If it is, you get an empty string. So the something we do is we put on our question mark, and then we want to do template. So inside of here, we're going to do object.keys. Which one are we looking at? Route.query. And in there, so then map. What we'll do is then convert that key to something. And the something being x, and that equals to, and then what it equals to is route.query of x. It's going to complain because query might be undefined, but we're only in this branch because we've checked whether it's undefined, so we'll say we know better. So right now we have an array of these key value pair strings. Of course, we don't want an array of them. We just want a string. So we'll come down here now and we'll say join, and we'll join with our ampersand. So now we should have the ability to create the query string from an I route. So that part's good. So we'll go back to whack-a-mole. So if we go into the main nav button, we have our problems in here. And what we'll do is just import in I route. So what we'll say now is that set active needs to take in an I route. So this then just becomes ID. And I think that should fix it for the buttons. Next up is our router outlet. The router outlet. Same deal. We need to import the iRoute and iRoute options. So instead of me reformatting this line with these three and adding two, we'll just copy and paste. And we'll come into the class here. So here we have our to entry, which is the route entry itself. We're going to create another one. So private to route, which is an I route. And then when we have animate, so we come into animate, now it's going to take in an I route. We need to find the entry. That's using the enum. And then we also need to route is equal to route. Forgotten that a couple times. I'm going to steal that I route. So this will be an I route. This is an I route. And this and this. Okay, so we're getting there. First off, though, we're going to come up here to the animation complete out. This $router.push is where we're putting in the URL that we want to navigate to. Right now it has no query parameter to it. So all we're going to do is change this to a template string. So we have our path. What we need is the query string, this dot routing service dot query string, and we have that this dot to route. So now we should have tacked on our query string at the end. And we need to fix down here. Change this to so const current, and that's equal to this dot routing service dot current. So we could use the routing service to create the I route, but it'll do a lookup to find the thing so we can get the name. We've already got it though, so let's just do it ourselves. So this is ID, which is current dot route, and this is name, which is current dot name, and then we want the query. So the query is this dot $route dot query. So the whole reason to use the same type for our query as what's on $route. So we can make that as easy as possible. Now, hopefully, with all those changes, let's do that. And I also look on our outputs. We have no errors. Everything's still working correctly. And do a couple things here before we finish up to see how it's working and add something else. So what we're going to do next is to have a view in which when we click on, say, security, we navigate to that view and we can see all the details so that we can edit, the symbol, last, whatever. We can edit everything related to that. So for security categories, markets, all of them. So let's start that by coming in and creating a new view. And that new file here, securities, I called it details. Let's see if I spell it right this time. Details.view. We'll just create a empty one real quick. Securities, details. And I do want to add a little bit to that since we're here as well. Let's just inject. So we've been doing all of this. Import from at, of course, /routing. And inside there we'll have we'll import in the routing service. So at inject, read only routing service. Okay, and we'll make for the moment, empty mounted that we'll come back and add to. Go ahead and save that. And luckily, we are not going to, so we're going to get to that view by clicking on something. So we're not going to add a button. So, but we do have to add that route. So we'll go into types, which is within our routing, add in securities details. Well, next we'll go into the routing service itself. And at the top here is where we're specifying all of the routes. I'm going to copy and paste. It's not too interesting to watch creating this. So we've created our security details, parent is securities, and we have our view file there. We just have to add this now to our routes array so we can save that. Now, we won't be able to see this here, but what I'm going to do is navigate to security details, and I'm going to put query string on there. We'll say ID or query ID equals 1, and we use one called which, and that's going to be which. So we'll navigate there. So we're on the security details page, right? Security details. What we'll take a look at here to motivate what we do next is console log this dot $router dot current route dot query. So if I save that, we'll see now that we have this query object down here. It has a property on it, ID and which is what we're going to use to tell, if we click on a category or we click on a security, that which will tell us it'll have an enum value on it. And of course, the ID is the ID. What we want to have, let's do this. So we'll have const ID equals this $router dot current dot query dot ID. And we'll have a const which is basically the same thing. Query which, and just to see that everything's working out when we do what we do here, it's console log stuff. So right now, of course, everything up there is a string. So we get a string. The ID is a string of 1, and which is a string of which. What I want is a type safe way of saying, hey, I want this property off of that, and it should be this type. So what we're going to do is come up here and create an interface. We'll probably have to move this somewhere else later. We'll call it iQuery. For our purposes, the query is going to contain an ID, which is a string, and a which is a string. Let's go ahead and save that. Now we're going to return to our routing service and create a method down here. So public query param. For now, we'll just return 10. So the point is going to be that instead of doing this number here, that we do this dot routing service dot query param, and same deal down here. Save it. So now we get number 10. Great. So in the routing service here, we're going to need to say, what we want to do is to say, when you look on the query object, this is the property that I want. And so we're going to do that by adding in some types. So first type, we're going to, I wouldn't make them more than just single letter, but I was running out of space. So the Q is going to be the type of the query, and the R here represents the result. And for our case, we'll say, at least for now, extends string or number. So we have a string or a number, and it defaults to string. So the result defaults to string. If you don't ask for something else, you're going to get a string. So we'll need a little extra space here. And I guess since I have 2 lines, I could probably make it more, but okay. So what we're going to do is pass in a function. That function is going to take in the Q, the query object, and it's going to spit out a string. We just saw that they're all strings. Next, there's instances, for instance, the ID, in which we don't want a string, we want a number out of it. So we're going to have a transform function, which takes in a string. That's what we're getting out of our function. And it's going to output an R. We're going to default this to be basically an identity, right? So give me the X, I'll give you X back as R, right? Again, R is either string or number. Right? So now what we can do is come in here and say that const param, that's equal to the func that's passed in, and then what we want to say is this dot router dot current route dot query. I guess we actually have a current route I could have used, but and I want to say as Q, right? It's going to tell us that we have a little bit of difficulty between the Q and the dictionary, so I'm going to sidestep this little problem here by ignoring it. First casting this thing to unknown so that I can cast it to Q. And then all we do is to say that we return transform of param. Save that. Of course, we're all messed up over here, but so first off, we give it our types, right? So we have an iQuery, and for now, we'll just leave that. We'll put iQuery on both of them. Right, and this one, we want to go X. It knows it's an iQuery, which has an ID. So now it has ID. And X dot which. So now we have which. Save it. Refresh. So right now, string 1, string which. So what we do over here is come in here, and what I want to do is to say the transform function I want to pass in is parse int. Now we're getting an error here because it's telling us that type number is not assignable to type string. So we do have to come over here and say that we want a number out of this thing. So now if we save it, now we get number 1, which is the ID, and the string which, so telling us, well, it's a string at the moment because need to create an enum and all that kind of stuff. But I think we've run through everything that we need, at least for a good while, to deal with query parameters. So we're able to create URLs. Our history takes care of the fact that we now no longer are just storing. Let's see if we can see separate window. Come on over here. Actually, just big enough. So now that if we go back to home, we should be able to see in view, X. So now we have our route getting pushed into there, and the routes are now objects instead of just enums, which shows the ID, which is the enum value, the name. So now I can see that it was security details where we were, and just makes it a lot easier to see what's going on with that name added to it. And I think that's going to take care of it for this video. And as I said, or I mentioned previously, in the next video, we're going to start dealing with that security details page. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. I know that your time is valuable. If you liked the video, please subscribe to our channel and click the thumbs up button, as well as share the video with your friends. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, please leave them in the comments section below. And once again, thank you, and I will talk to you in the next video.